Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Andrea Kayne. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting and Life Unscripted. I'm so grateful to have you here today. How are you?
I'm doing well, and thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to have you here. You've written a fabulous new book called Kicking Ass in a Corset, Jane Austen's 6 Principles for Living and Leading from the Inside Out by Andrea Kayne. And I love that because, I've read Jane Austen. I was required to read a lot of it in high school, but I was amazed at how many lessons there are in her heroine stories that, and we talked a bit before the interview, how the idea with modern women is that, the women of the past were weak, but we're so much stronger today. And it's not true. Even from stories from my grandma to my great grandma, they kick butt, and we forget the lessons we can learn from our great grandma, our grandma, our great 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 grandma, and Jane Austen on what the strength that women have, even in a difficult society where maybe you're not out there in front.
That is so true. Women in the past were pressured, they were confined, they were constrained, but they were creative, they were tenacious, they were strong. They had an ability to observe themselves and their own situation, independent of their society, and find ways to kind of express themselves and be free. And I really found in all of Jane Austen's heroines ingenious ways of doing that, that were instructive, have been instructive for me in my personal and professional life. And as a leadership professor, I found myself using those for my students, doctoral students and master's students in current situations. So I feel like there's lots of great instruction there.
You know what I'm curious about, Andrea? In today's modern life, we've never been more blessed with modern technology that can allow anyone, any woman, to actually get out there in a probably easier fashion than ever before to get their voices and their action and create themselves out in the world. But often we don't jump on those opportunities and those leadership opportunities, whereas before it was so much harder. Is it because life has become so easy that we don't try as hard or push as hard as the women in the past had to because they had no choice?
I think there's definitely something to that, almost like how the friction in the oyster creates the pearl. Sometimes there needs to be maybe more explicit friction. It's about survival of yourself and who you are and your voice. So you're going to do everything you can to make sure to maintain that voice and get it out there. So I definitely think the fact that there might be more avenues, we can take them for granted. And I think that's one of the lessons of Jane Austen, knowing who we are, what we want, pursuing it and claiming it.
Yeah. Now, where do you begin? Because there's so many women I feel that feel disillusioned. Like, I don't feel like I can be an awesome leader. I don't even feel like I am an awesome leader. How do they get in touch with who they are and explore that and expand that?
Well, I think there are a couple of lessons from Jane Austen that I use with women all the time. The first one is when someone says, I'm not an awesome leader, I have this thing called de-universalizing truths. And the first line of Pride and Prejudice, it is a truth universally acknowledged. And Jane Austen is making fun of this concept of universal truths. So I think we need to understand when we say, I'm not an awesome leader, is that coming from us? Or is that coming from our partner, our organization, our fearful parents, society, and really claim our own truths for ourselves? I think another lesson that I've learned from Jane Austen, and this is from Eleanor Dashwood, and it's about problem-solving resilience, is that women oftentimes are the ones solving problems, getting from point A to point B. They aren't formally the leader in their organization or their family or the community, but they're the de facto leader. So when I work with women, I say, well, actually, let's look at some of the things you've done the last year that you're proud of. That was leadership. Maybe you didn't get the title or the credit, but you were doing the work of leadership.
Wow.
So that's another lesson.
That is so true. I mean, even as far back as like when I was looking at my grandma, she worked as administrative assistant, and what people don't realize, the old administrative assistant, you think you're just typing 50 words a minute, whatever, whatever. You were the backbone of what held the office, the bank, the organization together. Those administrative assistants handled everything behind the big wig dudes that go into these meetings to talk with their, scotches and, whatever. But there were the women behind it that made it happen. And even going further back to the building of this country, there were women behind it who were writing the speeches, who were working behind in the Senate to help their men who were going out there and doing things, as well as holding down the fort for the people who were going out there and fighting for, freedom and liberty against the British Empire. So, I mean, there's so much that I think we need to give more credit to women and to ourselves to say we've got that same thing inside of us. Let's reach in there, pull it out, and pull out our best possible selves so we can do what some of our forefathers, grandfathers, grandmothers did.
That is such a good point. And, I think for your listeners, I'm 55 or a lot younger. Those administrative assistants, there was no cloud, there were no computers, there were no iPhones. Yeah. So they held all the knowledge and all the systems. If they were out sick, that boss fell apart. Mm-hmm. And I think part of what Jane Austen can instruct us today is that a lot of women do the work and they are integral at keeping everything running, but they don't get the credit from the outside. And so one of the things I use in one of my principles is Anne Elliot from Persuasion, who was someone who did all the work and didn't get the credit. But I really do feel what's instructive in that novel and bringing in the leadership literature is as women claiming our credit.
Yes.
For ourselves and in our organizations and in our families. And sometimes we feel uncomfortable doing that. And I think that's something, I think it's a practice, and we need to kind of put in the reps.
Yes, we need to go here right now because one thing I've gotten from talking to so many of my girlfriends, past guests who are women, is they say, well, why do men just get more opportunities or get more money? And I said to one of my friends a long time ago while we were, chatting over coffee, I said, you know what, just now that I think about it, in any negotiation or new job or new consulting gig I do, I generally take the first price that's put on the table. I never even consider to push for more. And I said to her, how about you? And she's like, well, I'm thinking that's what it costs, right? And I'm like, but that's just the problem. Men don't do that. They're like, oh, that's the starting point? Okay, I'm going boom. And but we don't think like that. So we need to get with why is the worth thing so hard for us?
It's such a good point. And I just want to say there's so much research that women don't negotiate. They just feel so grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah.
And they're so afraid of the opportunity leaving. And then what ends up happening is over the years, because they don't negotiate and they take much lower than their value, they can never catch up. And I really do think, and I think for me, this is Elizabeth Bennet, and a mixture of Anne Elliot, but Elizabeth Bennet knows her value. And you don't have to be a Jane Austen fan to like my book, but since you are, when Mr. Darcy, who's the wealthiest, most eligible bachelor,
everyone
proposes to her, but she's very insulted by him and his arrogance. She's really upset because he undermined her sister and Mr. Bingley. And she says no to him, even though she doesn't have a dowry, she doesn't have prospects, because she values herself more than society values her. And I talk about that notion and work with a lot of women on valuing ourselves and not looking for value from the external world, and kind of going in not as this vacuum, whatever they offer me, that's what I'm worth, but really knowing it, really having a solid core. And also, I think as women, we sometimes are the thermostats. So if other people are uncomfortable, we'll absorb all their stress so they won't feel uncomfortable. And we need to be able, it's not about being liked. It's
Yeah.
about fairness and exchange.
Oh my
And
God, the
maybe there's a
likeness is such
little
a hard thing.
discomfort, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little discomfort, but that's okay.
Mhm. It's so interesting you say that I've so often not wanted to make people feel uncomfortable or to please. Yeah, that
Yeah.
people pleasing thing that you're later on. And what you mentioned before about sitting on the thing saying, okay, I'm going to take this because I guess that's what it's paying, or I guess this what this opportunity is worth. And then what ends up happening when you kick butt and you put all your effort, 100%, and if you are at an organization for years, you'll end up feeling resentful, which I have in the past working for some people where they say, oh, we've had some downturn. We're going to cut your salary a little bit. I'm like thinking, dude, I've been doing 100% and the partner didn't get their salary cut. Why am I? So, but we just take it. And I think it leads to an internal resentment that's unhealthy for women and not good for our growth spiritually and as a person, outwardly.
That is so, so true. There have been so many situations, and I've had situations professionally, personally, where I've done all this extra work and more work. And then because I'm the good soldier, I get cut or
Yeah.
I get the crappy assignment. And I've, in reflecting on that, with humility and with a kind of growth mindset, which is my Emma, I
I love her.
realized that that it's so true. There are ways in which, Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can treat us badly without our consent. So I've looked at the ways in which I've enabled or unwittingly participated in paradigms where I'm taken advantage of. And I feel like Jane Austen provides some instruction how to change that paradigm and start making our claims and setting boundaries. And, it's just really, really important. And it's so good to realize it and to kind of wake up from that. And with our, I have a 24-year-old daughter, and I feel like she's gotten a head start in kind of knowing who she is and being able to say no and ask for what she wants way more directly than I ever did at that age.
I mean, you just set her up for success right there with that. I mean, if every parent, if you're a parent listening in, if you could take that in, one of the things it goes on for boys and girls is this idea of a box. You've got to fit inside the box. And my friend who's a parent said his daughter had gone to school and they said, so what do you want to be? And they gave you a list of things you could choose from. She's like, nothing's on here that I want. She wants to be a rock star, rock singer, whatever. And they're like, I'm sorry, that's not a real job. You got to pick a real one. Well, thank God he didn't listen, because he said, no, you always put down what you want. You want to be a rock singer, you put that down. That's what she does for a living today.
Goosebumps. That's awesome. That's my Catherine Morland, nurturing our dreaming and wonder and our passions. I think that's so important. And I mean, as a parent, it's, I remember when my daughter was little and someone asked for a play date. And I said, well, we're going to try to arrange a play date. And Ariel said to me, but I don't really like that girl. I don't want to play date. And I had a really hard time. I'm like, you can't say no to people. And then I had this, well, what would Elizabeth Bennet do? And it was, and again, I also talked to Ariel about how it's important to give kids a chance. But it was very interesting because I realized I have a really hard time saying no. But yet I'm such a Janeite. And Elizabeth Bennet is about standing for what you believe, what you like, who you are. And, as women especially, one of the good news is we're so relational. But the bad news sometimes is that we're so relational that we forget ourselves.
And we connect with people that aren't our tribe, really.
And who we are. And we're like living as like supporting characters in other people's lives, but not necessarily starring in our own. And we lose sight of that.
You know, that's so interesting. Just this year, I had decided not to say, oh, I'm not going to be nice to certain people or whatever, but there's certain people where their energy or they complain or gossip a lot, and it's just not fitting into where I am right now in my life. I don't want to be around that type of thing of gossiping and talking about other people. So I'm just not hanging around with them. And it's really hard for me when they say, hey, you want to go for dinner? I'm like, no. And I'm like, I'm busy. I'm making up excuses instead of saying that, I just don't. I'm not against you, the person. It's just that I want to grow as a person. And if I'm in that energy of talking about others or being negative, it's just not going to grow me as a person. And it's hard to just tell someone that thing. No, it's not going to work for me. Yeah.
I totally relate to that. I'm in a new marriage now, but like 6 years ago, I went through a divorce. And I remember attending like a support group for women who are going through divorce. And again, I love those women and I wish them well, but it was just a venting, angry, resentful. And I was like, this energy is just not the right energy for me. And I wish you all well, but I love you. Thank you. Goodbye. I need to go be in other energy. And that was, and you're a Jane Austen fan, but it was in Sense and Sensibility. I talk about the Eleanor paradigm or the Marianne paradigm. And I needed to be in that kind of resilient, hopeful, problem-solving kind of energy rather than being, a loop with,
Because what you end up doing, and I did this in my 20s, I remember it just hit me like a lightning flash one day. I was really unhappy in a job. I was working in a mailroom, very first job out of high school. And it's not a fun experience being in the mailroom. It's just not a fun job. But I remember all the girls would go to the bathroom in the morning and, fix their hair and complain, a bitch session, I call it. And one day it hit me. I'm like, what are we getting out of this? It's not making us better. It's not getting us out of this icky job into a white collar job or a better job. We're just going in circles complaining about the exact same thing day after day after day. And I decided from that moment on, I'm just not going to join the bitch sessions anymore because they're not doing anything for any of us. And what I'm really hoping from our conversation today is that we engage people, get them excited, go get your book, Kicking Ass in the Corset, and maybe even better also pick up a couple of Jane Austen or other classics out there because there's so much to learn.
That would be wonderful. There is so much to learn, and I love that too, the fact that we can notice the bitch session and then realize that we have a choice. We could be doing things that energize us or doing things that deplete us.
Exactly.
And that realization is really how we, live from the inside out and kind of take charge of our own professional and personal lives. So that's such a great example.
Yeah. So everyone, let's go out there and change from the inside out. Go get a copy of Kicking Ass in a Corset. How do they do that? How do they find out more about you as well?
Oh, it is available for pre-order on Amazon. So you can go to Amazon and you could also go to my website, AndreaKayne.com, and it's Kayne.
Okay. And when does it come out?
It comes out September 15th.
Oh, yay. Just before my birthday.
Hey, that's a good sign. Are you a Virgo?
No, I hit right after Virgo. So I'm Libra. But then, the following week. So it'll be awesome.
Hey.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I really appreciate you sharing these great messages with our savvy audience and anyone out there, man, woman, or child. I really push you, go out there, learn from Jane Austen, all the great classics, and Kicking Ass in a Corset. Thank you so much, Andrea, for coming to Savvy Broadcasting.
Oh, it was such a pleasure, Christina. Thank you so much.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.